Oh, and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin in Hawaii, where at least 55 bodies have been recovered from the wildfires in Maui, even as hundreds of people remain missing on the island, and officials expect this to rise further. We understand major wildfires are still burning across Maui, while neighboring Big Island is also grappling with blazes, although authorities say they are under control. Hawaii's Governor Josh Green calls the fires the largest natural disaster in Hawaii state history, adding that the death toll could rise. Other officials say the damage and destruction will take many years and billions of dollars to rebuild.
What we saw was likely the largest natural disaster in Hawaii state history. We are seeing loss of life here. As you know, the number has been rising, and we will continue to see loss of life. We also have seen many hundreds of homes destroyed, and that's going to take a great deal of time to recover from. But that's why we come together. But we talked to an old gentleman who hadn't seen anything like this ever in his life, a wildfire that took a whole city. His neighbors have all lost their homes. His home was intact, but he was in tears. This is a gentleman that doesn't cry easily.
In the meantime, President Joe Biden has expanded federal aid for Hawaii, expressing condolences for the devastation in a call with the state's governor. During an event in Salt Lake City, the president said he ordered all available federal assets, including the U.S. Coast Guard, the Navy and Army, to assist local emergency response crews along with the Hawaiian National Guard. Earlier, a White House statement said President Biden approved a disaster declaration for Hawaii aimed at spurring resources to allow the island rebuild.
The devastating wildfires that have claimed at least 36 lives in Maui and Hawaii. We have just approved a major disaster declaration for Hawaii, which will get aid into the hands of the people desperately needing help now. They've lost, anyone who's lost a loved one whose home has been damaged or destroyed is going to get help immediately. And I've directed that we surge support to these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working around the clock there, risking their lives. I just got off the phone before I got here for a long conversation with Governor Josh Green this morning. Let him know I'm going to make sure the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover. The FEMA Administrator Griswold will be in Maui tomorrow, and I've directed her to streamline any process with requests for help and survivors register for immediate federal assistance without delay. FEMA is surging disaster assistance personnel on the island, and they're going to help survivors get access to federal assistance. And you know, anybody who wants to know out there where to go if this is televised, that they can go to disasterassistance.gov. disasterassistance.gov to learn if you're eligible for assistance. And I've ordered all available federal assets on the island, including the U.S. Coast Guard, the Navy 3rd Fleet, and the U.S. Army to assist local emergency response crews along with the Hawaiian National Guard. We're working as quickly as possible to fight these fires and evacuate residents and tourists. In the meantime, our prayers with the people of Hawaii, but not just our prayers. Every asset we have will be available to them, and they've seen their homes, their business destroyed, and some have lost loved ones, and it's not over yet.
Well, what you see now on your screen is drone footage filmed on Thursday, showing much of the historic Lahaina town turned into smoldering ruins. Of all the towns affected by the inferno, Lahaina is said to be the most impacted, as a historic township has been razed to the ground. Officials have been taking stock of the damage and destruction, describing the sheer devastation that befell the township. The seaside of the town, which used to be the capital of Hawaii, is well known for its historic tourist sites. Among them is the oldest hotel in Hawaii, the 122-year-old Pioneer Inn, which its owners say has been gutted. The fires have also scorched Lahaina's famous banyan tree, which is believed to be the biggest one in the U.S. While the tree is still standing, there are fears it might not recover.
This is our first time coming back and actually knowing that our house burned down. We haven't really known anything for the last couple of days because there's no information coming through. Since we have no power, no cell service, no Wi-Fi, we're getting bits from car radio, but nobody really knows until they can make it in here whether their houses are standing or not. And I feel like because the winds were so high because of the hurricane, that it happened really fast. There wasn't even time for like officials to come around and tell you to evacuate. They were up Lahaina Luna, obviously evacuating people there, but nobody came into our complex until the flames were here and we were getting out, and then a fire truck was coming in. So it was kind of like left to your own.
People lost everything, homes, jobs, their cars, some their pets. There's still people missing. I fought wildfires in California, and I was here yesterday when it flared up, and I've never seen something ravage so fast. And this is going to go on for a while. This is going to take years to recover. And it just breaks my heart that all the history from back in the whaling days of the 1800s, dust, ash and dust.
Meanwhile, search and rescue efforts continue, and thousands of people have fled into emergency shelters or left the island. For survivors, it's been a harrowing ordeal. Many have been speaking of their dramatic story of how people survived the wildfire that tore through the holiday town. Vexay Lakham says his family was among those forced into the water when the flames encroached. He describes explosions, embers flying through the air, and several terrifying moments when the ocean nearly swept his kids away.
Trying to make our way back, but we couldn't. We got stuck. We tried to come back. We ended up in Front Street, my family and I, and it was just black smoke coming above us, and traffic was stuck. We were there by the seawall by Bubble Gum, I believe, and it got really real when we saw the flames, and I had to think fast. We had to get out. We left our vehicle, and myself, my wife, and our 5 kids, we all got in the ocean. We found a floating board that we hung onto, and we think we were out there floating, and it was just so surreal, and everything was burning around, explosions, cars blowing up, like embers was flying, we couldn't breathe. Because we couldn't breathe, there's no air, it's just the carbon monoxide, and we held on as best as we could. My wife, my kids, my older ones helped with the younger ones, and we tried to stick out together. The waves was trying to take us out to the ocean. We had to come back. There were some locals that helped us too, that were with us. They're really great people. These people are amazing. And we were out for 3 hours, and we clung onto the sea wall as best as we could, until we found the little cove area where we were about for an hour. With 2 of the locals were with us, and my family. I found some sheet metal to cover them because there was just still fire all around us, and embers were flying out. We cover them and cover myself as best as I could. At about 9:30 p.m., fire came to rescue us, and we walked through the town, the little corridor they made, and everything was just burned. Everything was destroyed. And yeah, we were at the shelter for that night. The final fight, instant survival. My adrenaline was rushing. I had to calm down. I worked in the ER for 15 years. You gotta help. You gotta take a deep breath. You gotta do this. We did. My kids were amazing. They were really good. A few points, my daughter, my little girl, was like, "Daddy, you okay, Daddy?" My other one told me, we'll be okay. They got us, and they're really tired, exhausted, and at some point, the ocean almost swept my kids away a few times. But yeah, we stuck together. We held on. We're not gonna die this way, no. And we're here. We're alive.
Quite an emotional moment. Well, Hawaii is no stranger to wildfires, but those of the past few days have been called the worst in the state's history. It's unclear what exactly started the deadly fires, but a combination of conditions which authorities say are exacerbated by climate change have made them worse. Firefighters are up against hurricane winds and drought fueling the flames, but they say they have contained most of them. Weather and fire experts say the severity of the wildfires on Maui Island stems from a confluence of extremely dry conditions, invasive vegetation, and the particular vulnerability posed by the topography of Maui's western coastline. Craig Clements, a meteorology professor at San Jose State University, said Maui had already been in drought conditions, putting it at greater risk of fires this year than, for example, California.
That part of Maui has a very steep mountain range, and the winds were coming from the northeast, and they were very strong winds. They were descending, going up and over the mountain range and descending what we call the lee side. And when that happens, you get acceleration near the surface. And so you get actually faster winds on the downslope side or the lee side of the mountain range. And this happens in California, the Santa Ana winds, the Diablo winds. Santa Barbara, California is susceptible to this as well with the sundowner wind. So a lot of mountain coastal communities have this situation. You know, when you get these structures burning in a high wind, they're creating embers that ignite the next structure, which ignite the next structure. And so it happens really quickly. What people don't realize is that Maui was in a D1, D2 severe drought for the season. And the risk for large fire potential was higher there than it was in California for this month and last month and in September as well. So these conditions all lined up with kind of a classic fire weather situation. It just so happened that there was ignition during the high wind event, allowing a very fast spreading fire to burn into the community towards the coast.
When you have higher temperatures, you have more evaporation of water. And also, you can think of it as plants being thirstier. So plants use more water when the air temperature is higher. So the water that is present tends to disappear more rapidly. Disappear from use by plants, disappear from use by humans. I mean, the water is still in the global water cycle, but in essence, it's less available to humans and less available to plants as temperatures increase.
We have this additional issue, which is that our island archipelago has been invaded by fire-prone grasses from all over the world. And so now we have this invasive species issue that has moved into all those fallow agricultural lands that and the problem is so big. I mean, over 1 million acres, and that's big for a small island. It's 26% of our state.
Well, let's bring in our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird. She joins us now for more on the wildfires. Hi, Maria. At this time, what updates can you tell us about those who are still missing? And we understand 55 bodies have been recovered, even as the fires keep raging.
Good evening. Yes, there are 55 bodies that have been found. Obviously, as you all heard earlier, the terrain in the mountainous region does cause for concern that there could be people trapped. As individuals who were able to evacuate and did make it back to their areas of their home, they saw how their homes were oftentimes demolished. And when you talk about fires that raged at a rate of 30 seconds, it could be from block to block. So in 30 seconds, a whole block could be taken out through the fires. Imagine how many individuals potentially could have been killed or at this time trapped inside of a area that maybe had a fireproof building. So this is something that I think the U.S. was not necessarily prepared for. This is something that is of a historic nature for Hawaii. This type of natural disaster they have not seen in recent times. As people have stated, this was almost as if a bomb went off in the region. So as we've talked about, people just jumping into the ocean because they were on the ocean side housing where these wildfires initially took place. And so this is going to be a long-term process to be able to secure individuals and to help them evacuate the region.
Have there been any challenges with the evacuation process? We've been hearing devastating stories from survivors, tourists, and locals who have lost their homes and their livelihoods.
Well, due to the island being a very small region and not necessarily having as much airline access, and airlines really being the only way to evacuate, that does make it challenging. Hawaii Airlines CEO has announced that he is adding flights to help evacuees to be able to evacuate. But imagine there's but only so many planes that can land at one time that will be able to address and getting individuals out.
So have you heard from any of the tourists who perhaps are still stuck there, how they plan to get home?
The tourists that are stuck there are obviously, unfortunately, having to be in evacuation zones and in buildings for evacuees. They're hoping, because obviously many airlines have had to reshuffle their flight times and things of that nature. So they are hoping to be able to get out as soon as possible. So obviously the airport, but as we also know, the fire has only been contained at 80%. So there's still 20% of the fire that's still raging. So there's still major risk of even getting air flights in and airplanes in to be able to help evacuees. And so this is something that I think people could not have expected. And for those tourists, they are just hopeful and prayerful that they will be able to get out if they have not already been able to evacuate.
We've been hearing from weather and fire experts talk about the likely cause of, the fires, the topography of the western coastline, the extreme dry conditions and invasive vegetation. But the authorities, I know they are investigating, but do we know anything else for certain?
There's nothing else for certain. If you really think about where they're saying that this wildfire began, the ocean line, it's very rare that you would see fires at the ocean line unless we are talking about drought conditions. And we know the U.S. has unfortunately had an unprecedented number of wildfires due to drought conditions. We know states like California have had to put water restrictions because of the drought conditions. So they want to, trying to ensure that people are not overusing water that could be used to help with vegetation and helping to ensure the area and the actual areas of the community are able to be wet enough so that we don't see these fire-like conditions. So this is something I think that is a direct result of climate change. They have not been able to tie it to anything that could have been malicious intent or something that started a fire. And so I think they're going to continue to investigate. But this could potentially put in place additional restrictions around things like cigarette smoking, things around campfires that could be happening in communities where people are using campgrounds. So you could see those type of things, restrictions being put in place, even if they're not able to tie anything to those type of potential causes.
And hopefully, Maria, after the announcement by President Biden, the expansion of federal aid for Hawaii, that is expected to aid the situation, yes?
Yes, that is 100% correct. I think we talked yesterday about FEMA being sent on the ground, and we knew that was forthcoming. And so there will be tons of federal emergency management administrators on the ground as soon as possible to be able to assist. And it'll probably be a slow process because you are talking about the region that exists. It's very hard to access without airplanes.
Thanks, Maria. We continue to watch the situation. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird, live for us there. Still ahead on the program. West Africa's regional bloc, ECOWAS, insists on return to democratic rule in Niger, says all options still on the table, including peace. Please stay with us. In the meantime, Russia has launched its first moon landing spacecraft in 47 years. That's in a bid to be the first power to make a soft landing on the lunar South Pole. The region is believed to hold coveted deposits of water ice. The Soyuz Tu-1V rockets carrying the Lunar 25 craft blasted off from the Vostochny Cosmodrome 3,450,000 miles east of Moscow at 2:11 a.m. Moscow time. According to Russia's space chief, the lander is expected to touch down on the 21st of August. As of earlier this week, India's Chandrayaan-3's spacecraft was due to reach the surface on August the 23rd. The Russian lunar mission, the first since 1976, is racing against India, which sent up its own lunar lander last month, more broadly with the United States and China, which both have advanced lunar exploration programs. And it's the day after the second extraordinary session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of ECOWAS, which took place at the presidential villa, the nation's capital, Abuja. And these leaders, they've taken a very strong stance on the political situation in the effort to restore democratic order in Niger Republic. According to them, no option is taken off the table in resolving the political crisis, and that includes the use of force. Our State House correspondent, Larry Lasisi, reports.
It's the second extraordinary session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the ECOWAS taking place at the presidential villa in Abuja. The focus of this meeting is the political situation in Niger Republic following the expiration of the 7-day ultimatum given for the return of democratic rule to Niger.
Excellency,
the chairperson of ECOWAS welcomes the members with an outline of the efforts by the bloc, including sanctions and mediation efforts that are yet to yield results. He advocates more diplomatic efforts and dialogue.
It is crucial that we prioritize diplomatic negotiations and dialogue as the bedrock of our approach. We did. And we still look to engage the party involved, including the coup leaders, in honest discussion to convince them to relinquish power as suggested.
The body then goes into a closed-door session to review the developments since its last meeting.
We have reaffirmed our commitment.
Hours later, the doors are thrown open and the chairperson gives his closing remarks. He reiterates that all options will be considered in ensuring a peaceful resolution of the situation in Niger.
No option is taken off the table, including the use of force as a last resort. If we don't do it, no one else will do it for us.
It is then time for the reading of the communique.
Uphold all measures and principles agreed upon by the extraordinary summit held on Niger on 30th July 2023. Underscore the determination of the ECOWAS authority to keep all options on the table for the peaceful resolution of the crisis. Enforce all measures, in particular border closures and strict travel bans and assets freeze, on all persons or groups of individuals whose actions hinder all peaceful efforts aimed at ensuring the smooth and complete restoration of constitutional order. Direct the Committee of the Chief of Defense Staff to activate the ECOWAS standby force with all its elements immediately. Order the deployment of the ECOWAS standby force to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger.
ECOWAS is urging the African Union to endorse their decisions while asking partner countries and institutions, including the United Nations, for support to ensure a quick resolution of constitutional order in Niger Republic. Some of the presidents who spoke later make clear their resolve on the matter.
ECOWAS cannot accept this. This is not a matter of Nigeria against Niger, not at all. The decision that we have made today, and I hope it will be implemented immediately, is a decision of ECOWAS. All the head of states think that we have tried dialogue with the putsch of Niger. I personally consider this as a terrorist act, and we cannot let this continue. We have to act. The position of Côte d'Ivoire, which has been endorsed by all of the head of states, is that we have been able to tell these putschists that their place is in the barracks.
Well, if we had made mistakes in the past, we should try to correct it now. There is always a time to get started. I think it was a mistake not to have taken action previously. But now that we are together on this, we should take action to make sure that it does not continue.
It's the end of the second extraordinary session on the political situation in the Republic of Niger, and it's now time to see if this set of resolutions will bring the much-needed stability and the return of democracy to that country. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the U.S. says it appreciates West African regional bloc ECOWAS's determination to explore all options for the peaceful resolution of the coup in Niger after the group approved a standby military force. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he was joining ECOWAS leadership in their call for constitutional order in Niger following the 26 July military coup that toppled President Mohamed Bazoum. In a statement, he said the U.S. would hold the Niger junta accountable for the safety of Mr. Bazoum, his family, and detained members of his government. The U.S. and the UN earlier said they were concerned about the health and safety of the deposed president, who has spent more than 2 weeks under house arrest. The junta ignored a Sunday deadline to reinstate Mr. Bazoum or face military intervention. Instead, the military leaders have named a new cabinet to run the country. Now, joining us for more on this is a professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Professor Victor Ariole. He joins us now for more. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with your thoughts on the ECOWAS stance, and that's the latest from the second extraordinary meeting on the coup in Niger.
Well, ECOWAS has right to do something immediately, just as President Ouattara mentioned. There is a need to intervene right now because otherwise, it will turn to conflagration, and it will affect most of the countries in West Africa. Already 5 countries are a bit shaky, and this is not excluding Ghana, because Ghana is completely on the north side of both Niger and Burkina Faso. So it's beyond Nigeria also that is completely on top of Niger in terms of geography. There is a need to quickly intervene. And I see ECOWAS doing what it takes to show its relevance. The only thing is that they made mistake. It would have been proactive. Because as of today, we know the problem is brewing in Senegal. And ECOWAS has made effort to see how it can intervene to stop the Senegalese own. Because the president, Macky Sall, wants to turn himself third term. And people are not really agreeing to that. And the military even are in support of the people, trying to make sure that he does not get himself into third term. And he has come to agree with the military and the people that he should not present himself for third term. These are issues that ought to have been done or ought to have been going on in ECOWAS in terms of mediating for peace and good governance. And it's expected that ECOWAS keep on doing that because there is no economy without political stability, for sure.
And we've also heard President Macky Sall deny that he's coming again for another term. But then looking at the situation in Niger, it's rather interesting that it appears citizens, Nigerians, have sort of given the coup plotters the support. Do you think that they are overall excited about this military takeover?
Well, you see, this is crowd mentality. It's always like that. Whatever it is, you see, is just unwelcome. They are not so excited because they want to see the military. After all, they have seen not less than 7 military coups in Niger. So this is not the first time there is military coup in Niger. And they have known that it has never helped them. The only thing is that bad governance is the problem in Niger. It's just unfortunate that you have about no fewer than 24 million people, and just fewer than 1 million people are educated in Niger Republic. And what do you expect? They would be very, very childish in their attitude to governance, and they feel that anyone who comes would be seen as a messiah or liberator. So these are things that elite and good governance ought to have proved to them that it doesn't work. Since the death of Amani Diori has been their first president, and they killed him just like that. It's still military. Sandy Kunshe came, he was also in Pagmai. The same way, they have gone through several military coups. And I don't think it's just good for them. It's just the problem of seeing themselves very, very, very helpless. And their helplessness is just based on, if you like, illiteracy. Because there is no way you can have such a good population in terms of naivety, and the elite is not making any effort to develop them educational-wise and other social justice-wise. So it's just impossible. They just have to be excited, because what is there for them again? Someone who is already down does not feel anything bad about falling down further. So somebody or a group, ECOWAS is supposed to wake up to make effort that its population, about 500 million people in the sub-region, see some goodness in having good governance and good social welfare package for its people. Very, very important. And so the poor people in Niger, of course, they will be excited. What do you expect? And it's basically Niamey. We can see that it's just like a country of one city-state. Beyond the other sites, they are exploiting mineral resources, which is secret and hidden areas for them that they can't even penetrate because of the security implication. I mean, US is there, France is there, all of them doing their own exploitation. So what do you expect? They wouldn't know what it takes to have good governance or to live a better life. So they are just helpless. That's all.
Indeed. I was going to ask you finally, Prof, in terms of, the relationship moving ahead, and that is between France and some of those Francophone countries in Africa. What do you see that looking like?
Well, you see, like Nigerians, some Nigerians will say that France has been exploiting them all along with keeping their reserve or keeping either 30 or 40 or 70% of their income, just like people say. It's a facade approach to seeing how good governance happens. After all, France is in Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire, if you like. France is in Gabon. France is in Senegal. And they have a military pact with all of them. And they have been trying to make effort to see that such countries. Are you telling me that the GDP of Côte d'Ivoire or Gabon or Senegal that is better off does not give room to show that it's not completely an exploitative thing as they see in general? I mean, Nigerians are also exploited. I mean, every reserve of Nigeria is in dollars. So if their own reserve is in CFA or French euro, what is wrong in that? It's like leveraging them. And some people will say they are not economically independent. Well, in Africa, I still want to see which country is really economically independent. Even Nigeria we are in does not seem to be economically independent. Otherwise, how can we be exploiting, how can we have petrol in our land and we are still paying very costly for it? So these are issues that concern Africa. And there is a need to have a united stand in Africa for unity of purposes, so to develop the economy of Africa for the interests of Africans and not necessarily on, if you like, sourcing it out for the big powers. And that's exactly what the French people or Francophone Africans are suffering. And so they are not exception. It's general.
All right, Professor.
And so we have to look at it that way,
Indeed, wish we had more time. We appreciate your time. Thank you. We continue to watch the developments. Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Professor Victor Ariole, thank you for joining us on the program.
You're welcome.
Still ahead. Tourists recount flight experience as Virgin Galactic launches them to the edge of space. Join us again. Welcome back. The world's biggest producer of semiconductors, TSMC, has announced it will build a new chip factory in the German city of Dresden, East Germany. The Taiwanese firm will invest 3.8 billion euros in the facility. The German government will also pitch in. It is subsidizing the mega project with up to 5 billion euros. The plans, which will be TSMC's third outside traditional manufacturing bases, Taiwan and China, are central to Berlin's ambition to foster the domestic semiconductor industry. Its car industry will also need to remain globally competitive. For more on this, I'm joined by Deutsche Welle correspondent Marie Sinner. She joins us from Berlin. Marie, the world's largest chip producer setting up shop in Berlin. What is Germany hoping to gain from this?
Yeah, this week, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germany is probably developing into the largest location for semiconductor production in Europe. And now the big motivational factor behind this plan is independence. Independence in chip production from Asia, namely from Taiwan and from China. And that's because Europe actually right now produces less than 10% of semiconductors, of these important chips that the economy runs on worldwide. And that became a big problem during the pandemic when supply chains broke down. In Germany, for example, there were no more chips for the automotive industry, which of course is a vital factor for the German economy. And so the plan here in bringing this factory to Dresden, where there will be a big production of chips for cars, is independence. Now, whether that's a realistic goal or a pipe dream is another question, because the building blocks, the raw materials needed for these chips will still have to be imported from China. Another more concrete goal is boosting the East German economy. This factory will be built in Saxony, which is in East Germany. And East Germany has been trailing behind West Germany economically since reunification. And this factory will provide 2,000 jobs, and it will help push East Germany to become the sort of tech hub in Germany, which is a plan of the German government.
German government is investing a big sum of taxpayers' money, up to 5 billion euros, into the project. How is the investment being perceived?
Critically, actually. So this 5 billion euro investment actually comes after the German government already pledged 10 billion euros of taxpayer money for an Intel factory in Magdeburg, in another German city. And so altogether, the German government is dishing out 15 billion euros in subsidies for these two projects alone. And economists are specifically being critical because they're saying that Germany is not suitable to become a mass production hub. So these investments long-term don't make much sense for the German economy. And that's because energy is very expensive in Germany and labor is very expensive in Germany. And Germany has a skills gap, a skills shortage when it comes to semiconductor production. And so economists are saying that globally Germany won't be able to compete with other mass production hubs, and that money would be much better spent in pushing Germany as an innovation hub, for example. So investing these billions of euros into research, into universities, into AI research centers, or actually making Germany a more attractive investment country to begin with. So getting rid of red tape. Germany is incredibly bureaucratic, pushing forward digitalization in Germany. Germany lacks a lot of digital infrastructure. And if those aspects would be there, then potentially these companies would come to Germany on their own terms without having all this government money being thrown at them. That's the big criticism here coming from economists in Germany.
Maria, how does this factory fit into the larger picture? The German investment in TSMC, is one of the factories coming at a time governments across Europe, across the world, are increasingly throwing money at domestic chip production.
Yeah, so this factory is a small puzzle piece in a global subsidy race. Everyone wants to have sovereignty when it comes to producing chips, because everybody has been, countries around the world have realized their huge dependence on countries like Taiwan, and the difficulties that come with that once supply chains break down, or once, for example, the tensions between Taiwan and China heat up. So that's why the US last year passed the American Chips Act, worth 52 billion. Japan and South Korea have been heavily subsidizing chip production in their countries, and the EU is now running this race as well. Last month, the EU passed the EU Chips Act worth 43 billion euros, and the goal is there that Europe wants to produce 20% of chips worldwide by 2030, so double its worldwide production share. And so this factory is in line with that Chips Act and with this European plan of becoming more independent, having more sovereignty, and being a bigger player when it comes to semiconductor production.
Many thanks, Marie. We'll continue to watch that story. Marie Sinner, Deutsche Welle correspondent, joining us from Berlin. And it was a joyful occasion for the graduating and induction set of the Carrington Youth Fellowship Initiative, CYFI, in Lagos this week. For the graduating cohorts, their projects were focused on promoting civic engagement, economic empowerment, education, healthcare delivery, and environmental conservation. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amrati Ubani, has more.
It's been a long and exciting 12 months for the latest cohorts of the Carrington Youth Fellowship Initiative. The latest set, drawn from 3 southwest states of Lagos, Oyo and Ogun, were involved in various projects and engaged with mentors in various fields of endeavor. Today, 45 of them go into the world, not just as sci-fi fellows, but world changers.
For the longest time, we've talked about African solutions to African problems, right? We absolutely need African solutions to African problems. But we also need African solutions to global problems, right? And we need your help. As the torch of service and leadership is passed on to you, remember that the journey ahead is challenging, but as we've seen from your graduating fellows, it's filled with extraordinary possibilities for positive change.
Witnessing their graduation is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Youth and Social Development in Lagos State, Mrs. Zainab Okeosoitolu, and representatives of the Nigeria Youth Future Funds, the Ford Foundation, and the MacArthur Foundation, among others, as partners of the fellowship program. Awards are handed out to those who performed exceptionally well in all 3 states, to the delight of the crowd who cheer on their favorites.
It's not because I'm the best person. I think I've just been put on the spotlight to be an ambassador for the core values. And I feel it's a huge responsibility. I feel deeply honored because it's along the line of some people that I respect, like Mr. Shola. I'm learning he was also a best fellow. And I feel like my possibilities are endless. And I feel deeply honored.
As great fellows, fantastic youths, doing great things. And to be counted worthy of the award of the best fellow is really a great privilege, and I'm really excited.
Inductees, 65 of them, got the opportunity to be recognized and get a photo with the Consul General. They also look forward to many months of mentorship and training.
I think networking is one of the most important takeouts for me, being a sci-fi fellow, the ability to meet people who are doing amazing stuff in their communities, and also the ability to learn skills that would impact my goals of being a future leader.
It's an opportunity to receive hands-on mentorship and to improve, contribute, and make a social impact in Nigeria.
Sci-Fi President Olushola Owonikoko, who is in his 2nd tenure, highlights the importance of the fellowship program and its benefits.
It's a 1-year-long fellowship program where young people are trained. There's a rich curriculum, and then they get funding to design and implement programs that have direct impact on Nigerian society. And from there, we've seen organizations started. We've seen people have access to global opportunities, become policymakers and do great things.
Launched in 2011, the Carrington Youth Fellowship Initiative is the only homegrown fellowship program by the U.S. government in Nigeria. It was established by the U.S. in honor of former ambassador to Nigeria, Walter Carrington, as a dynamic youth-based initiative. Although open to only people in the southwest states of Lagos, Oyo, Ondo, and Osun for now, there are plans to expand to Enugu and Delta states.
Congratulations to them. And finally on the program, Richard Branson's company Virgin Galactic has blasted 3 tourists to the edge of space aboard its air-launched VSS Unity space plane. A live stream showed the company's 2nd commercial mission as it starts routine flights and expects to begin offering monthly trips to customers on its winged space plane. Cheers erupted from families and friends watching from below when the craft's rocket motor fired after it was released from the plane that had carried it aloft. And that's the world today. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.